Okay, students, then we have done the classification of costs. Now we know what are the elements of cost, that are material, labor, and expenses. Then we know the meaning of direct and indirect. Then after that we have learned what do you mean by direct and indirect materials, direct and indirect labor, direct and indirect expenses. So we have a clear idea about what those things are. Now, what do you mean by overheads? All the indirect part, as we have told before, all the indirect costs, that is indirect material, indirect labor, and indirect expenses together is called the overheads. It is a combination of all indirect material, indirect labor, and indirect expenses. Overheads are classified as below: factory overhead, administration overhead, selling and distribution overhead. Now, what are the expenses that come under these following headings? That one we will see. Factory overhead. Expenses that are incurred in the production place or within factory premises will come under the factory overhead. Example: indirect material, rent, taxes of factory, canteen expenses, indirect wages will come under factory overhead. Next is administration overhead. Expenses that are incurred in connection with the general administration of the company. So those expenses which are related with the general administration of the company will come under administrative overheads. Example: salary of administrative staff, postage and telegram, stationery, etc. Next is selling overheads. Expenses incurred in connection with sales will come under selling overheads. Example: salary of sales department staff, travelers' commission, advertisement, etc. And last is distribution overhead. We also write selling and distribution overheads together. So the expenses incurred in connection with the delivery or distribution of the goods and services from the production to the customer are the distribution overheads. Example: delivery van expenses, loading and unloading, custom duty, salary of delivery man, etc. So, from this class, you have learned the elements of cost. There are three elements: material, labor, and expenses. Again, they are divided into direct and indirect. Direct are those costs which are conveniently or easily identified from the product. Indirect costs are those costs which cannot be conveniently or easily identified with the product. They are direct material, direct labor, and direct expenses. Then again there are indirect labor, indirect material, and indirect expenses. All the indirect costs, that is indirect material, labor, and expenses, together are called the overheads. And the overheads are again classified as factory overhead, administration overhead, selling, and distribution overhead. So I hope you have understood what are the elements of cost and its classifications clearly. Thank you.